All right, fellow YouTubers, welcome back. Judah Z, PandA Law Firm. Today, we're talking about bankruptcy versus debt settlement. Which one is right for you? Well, we're going to find out. Just listen. Like every video, we're here to educate. We're here to give you some broad-ranging information. Please feel free, if you have questions, put them in the comment. If they're private, questions@pandalawfirm.com. Understand that sometimes I'll be giving Nevada-specific information because I'm a Nevada licensed attorney. We have other attorneys at our law firm that are licensed in other states, or please contact a consumer protection attorney or debt relief attorney in your state to learn more. But today's topic, once again, bankruptcy versus debt settlement. Which is right for you? So let's first talk about debt settlement. Well, what is debt settlement? Debt settlement is informal negotiation with your creditors. Well, what's informal mean? That means outside of court. Right? So essentially, we're going to negotiate with these creditors for them to take less money and or get you on affordable payment plans so you can get out of this debt cycle that you're trapped in. And in roughly 1 to 2 years, you'll be out of debt and save yourself a ton of money. Debt settlement, as we discussed, will save you money. It'll also avoid bankruptcy. You normally won't lose anything as far as property, homes, cars, things like that. Normally, it's less severe on your credit. So it's not like the big axe that falls with bankruptcy. You'll normally have credit repaired in about 2 to 3 years after we start. But it's an informal process. So there's no strict guideline as to when the credit will be at a certain point, but understand incrementally it'll get better as we settle the debts. Some of the additional benefits over bankruptcy. Well, it's quicker than a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy normally takes 5 years. Debt settlement, if it's done right, 2 to 2.5 years. And you don't have the court telling you what you can and cannot do. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it's kind of like your dad saying, hey, you can't spend money on this or you can't buy that. In debt settlement, there's no one telling you that. As long as you can afford the budget and we can get out of the debt settlement in 2 to 2.5 years, you can spend your money as you please. So all that sounds great, right? Why wouldn't everyone do debt settlement over a bankruptcy Chapter 13 in particular? Well, there's some downsides too. In the bankruptcy, you have protection from the court. So as long as you make that required payment to the bankruptcy trustee, you don't have to worry about any of the creditors, suing you or trying to collect more or not agreeing to a settlement. In bankruptcy, they don't have that choice. In debt settlement, there's no requirement that the creditors settle. Now, vast majority of the time, think 95% of the time, they're going to settle because it makes business sense for them to do so, right? Have a bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush, especially when you might be a bankruptcy candidate. They don't want to take that risk. So often they will settle, but there's no guarantee. Also, in debt settlement, there may be a tax consequence. And I'm not a tax advisor, go consult one. But here's the thing, when you get forgiven of debt, that creditor has the option, not mandatory, but they have the option of sending you a 1099-C. 1099 is income, C stands for canceled debt, and you may have to pay a tax, whatever your income tax rate is on that canceled debt. Not necessarily, because if you're insolvent under the tax code, then you wouldn't have to pay. But if you want more information on that, check out irs.gov, look at 1099-C and insolvency. So who are the ideal candidates for debt settlement? Who should look into that? Well, number one, if you're not a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, if you're getting that recommendation, then you should also look at the debt settlement option. Probably about 70 to 80% of the time, that's going to be better, especially if you're a full repay Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Also, if you're making minimum payments and you can afford those, then normally we can take that minimum payment, redirect it to debt settlement, and for the same monthly debt service, cash flow, we can do debt settlement. Well, that means you'll be out of the debt in 2 years, not 25, 35 years, and you're only going to pay a fraction of the debt, even including attorney's fees, not a multiple of the debt, like 3 times that you would normally pay if you're making minimum payments. Number 3, if you are a Chapter 7 bankruptcy filer, but you might lose something in the bankruptcy. Well, in debt settlement, we can avoid you losing anything. Number 4, if you're a small business owner, oftentimes we have to negotiate the debt not only for you, but for the business as well. Where if you're going to go down the bankruptcy route, the business would have to file a bankruptcy, you'd have to file a bankruptcy. It can get very expensive and very complicated. So debt settlement might be an easier, less expensive way to resolve the debt if you're a business owner. So as we talked about, debt settlement might be a good route for you if you're a minimum payment payer, okay? Because it normally takes about 35 years to pay off debt, and you're gonna pay 3 to 4 times the amount if you're making minimum payments. Now, if you really wanna have a good idea of how much money it will save you, there's a debt calculator at www.pandalawfirm.com. It's free, just check it out. It'll tell you how much it's gonna save you versus making minimum payments. Understand, as a lawyer, I cannot counsel you to break a contract. But if we're going to do debt settlement, it does require that you stop making payments. But think about that. Think about if that's something wise for you to do before we go down this road of debt settlement. Now, if you can think of any pros or cons with debt settlement that I haven't addressed here, please feel free to chime in, put them in the comments, and we'll discuss them in a future video. If you like what you've heard so far in this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. It will allow us to provide more information in the future, more videos just like this. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. If there are questions where you feel like you need some more privacy, please email them to us at questions@pandalawfirm.com, and we'll do our best to get to those as soon as possible as well. So we talked a little bit about debt settlement. Now let's talk about bankruptcy in a little bit more detail. So as we've already discussed, for individuals, there's 2 types, Chapter 7s, Chapter 13s. Chapter 7 is often referred to as a fresh start bankruptcy. It gets rid of all the unsecured debt, think credit card, medical debt, payday loans, personal loans, broken leases, utilities, things like that. Will not get rid of fraudulent debt. So if you lied to get a debt, criminal debt, debt tied to divorce, child support, won't get rid of that stuff. Takes about 3 to 4 months from filing to completion. After it's done, if you have a good law firm representing you like PandA, we're going to show you how to rebuild your credit within a short period of time. Normally within 2 years, you can go buy a home. After that, your credit score will be high enough for that. There's things that are protected: primary residence, car, money in the bank, retirement. How much is protected is a state-by-state analysis. So it really depends upon the state in which you have residency. And that's why you want to get a lawyer that's barred in that state to do the bankruptcies. Also, you want to make sure that it's an actual lawyer filing your bankruptcy, not a paralegal or a legal assistant. Paralegals and legal assistants do great work, but it should not be them that are actually drafting the filings and filing them for you. So that was Chapter 7 in a nutshell there. Chapter 13, reorganization repayment plan. It's normally a 3 to 5 year plan. If you make above median income, it's a 5-year plan. If you make below median income, it's a 3-year. You can have your option, either 3 to 5 years. You're going to pay back whatever your disposable income is. Well, what does that mean? Disposable income means net income, so whatever the household takes home, minus reasonable household expenses based upon what the IRS, what the Department of Treasury says is reasonable for your geographic area. Whatever's left over is called disposable income. You pay that disposable income to the court for a maximum of 5 years or until all the debt is repaid, whatever happens first. So why would anyone ever file a 13 over a 7? Well, maybe you don't qualify for a 7 because you make too much money. Maybe you lose an asset in a 7 that you could keep in a 13. Maybe you filed a 7-2 recently, like within 8 years, and your only option is to file a 13. Those are all good reasons why someone might file a 13 over a 7. That 13 is going to stay in your credit report for 7 years after date of filing. So here are some of the pros of bankruptcy. Number 1, can stop lawsuits, can stop foreclosures, can stop repossessions, pretty much guaranteed. So that's very powerful. Number 2, it can get you out of debt quickly in a Chapter 7, right? We'll just wipe out all the debt. Chapter 13 can restructure the debt. Bankruptcies can sometimes get rid of IRS debt as well if you meet certain parameters, and we can talk about that in a future video, but it can get rid of IRS debt. That's powerful. There's also a way to rebuild your credit after a bankruptcy that most people don't realize. After a bankruptcy Chapter 7, within 6 months, most of our clients are back up to around a 650 FICO. You'll get credit card offers, car loans. Within 2 years, they're above a 700 credit score. They can get FHA home loans. You can get an FHA home loan after 1 year of on-time payments in a Chapter 13. Most people don't realize that. Those are really powerful things to reset your life. Also, in a Chapter 13, sometimes we can strip off second or junior liens in homes. And we can talk about that more in another video, but that's a powerful tool. So these are all ways that a bankruptcy can give you a direct positive impact that other legal avenues like debt settlement can. You just have to measure, is that worth it to file a bankruptcy? So we talked about some of the pros. Well, what are some of the cons of bankruptcy, right? Well, there's a stigma, right? We know that people sometimes feel shame when it comes to bankruptcy. We've talked about that in other videos, but understand that's not something that should be very relevant to you. But understand that we're all individuals and sometimes you can feel shame. So that's one perhaps downside. There's a severe impact to your credit score. It's going to hit you hard. Now we can show you how to rebuild, but for a number of years, your credit's going to be negatively impacted. You have to sometimes go to court. You got to sometimes take classes online. Those are required in a bankruptcy. So those are things that you have to be comfortable with. There's a public record. Now, most people don't know how to look up if someone's filed a bankruptcy or not, but there is a public record. And if someone really wanted to know, they could find out that you filed a bankruptcy. Not so with debt settlement, right? That's normally only someone would see that if they could pull your credit report, which they need permission to do so. Possible loss of assets. In a bankruptcy, you may lose certain things like investment properties, or if you have too much money in the bank, or if you have too many vehicles that can't be protected. All those things could be at risk in a bankruptcy or not so in debt settlement. And then the other thing is there's a time period from filing to filing. So in a Chapter 7, there's an 8-year cooling off period from filing to filing. So if you file a 7, you better make sure that it's worth it because you can't file another one for 8 more years. And that's a powerful card to have up your sleeve if you need it. Well, so who are the ideal candidates for filing a bankruptcy? Well, people who can qualify for a Chapter 7 and who have over $10,000 in debt, that might be a good thing. For people who are risking foreclosure on their home or repossession of the car and they want to keep that could be good. Those are mainly the ideal people for a bankruptcy, Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13. If you don't qualify for a 7 and you're going to be a Chapter 13, like I said earlier, you really want to check out the debt settlement option with a qualified attorney, because that might be a better way to go than Chapter 13. Again, if you can think of any other pros or cons for a bankruptcy, please put them in the comment. I'd love to address them. There's sure many that I missed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what is a pro or a con of bankruptcy and or debt settlement. Please put it in the comment. All right, let's talk about another option, debt consolidation. Debt consolidation is where you apply and hopefully get a loan to pay off all these unsecured debts that you may have. Debt consolidation is not debt settlement. People get these confused all the time, right? And there's service providers that actually take advantage of that. So we talked about debt consolidation as you getting a loan. Debt settlement, as we discussed prior, is us negotiating with these creditors after you've stopped paying them to reduce the debt. So very different things. There's sometimes you'll find there's service providers that will say, hey, apply for this debt consolidation loan as kind of a bait and switch to really get you into their debt settlement program. So we have to be very aware of this. Now, debt consolidation is right for some people, right? They may like it. Well, what's the benefit? That they don't have to go through a bankruptcy, that they don't have to be concerned about getting sued because they're paying their debts on time, that it's a single pay, right? So instead of paying a whole bunch of different credit cards, that they can just pay this one debt consolidation loan. Perhaps it's a lower interest rate. These are all benefits for debt consolidation. You just have to decide whether that's good enough for you, right? Whether it's right for you. Well, what are some of the cons? What are some of the bad things about debt consolidation? Number one, you got to apply for it, right? You got to qualify. And for a lot of people, their debt to income ratio is too high, so they don't qualify, or they've already missed some payments, and so their credit's been hit, so they don't qualify. So you might not get it. It's not something that you can get just because you want. Number two, you're still going to be paying back all this principal. You're still going to be paying costs. You're still going to be paying interest. So a lot of times with the interest and the cost, you're still going to pay back double the principal, even if you get a debt consolidation loan. So is that worth it for you? Maybe bankruptcy is cheaper. Maybe debt settlement is cheaper if you're willing to take that credit hit. Another possible con with debt consolidation, and a lot of people, this is what people don't think of, it can actually damage your credit. Oftentimes, debt consolidation is a precursor to someone filing a bankruptcy. And your lenders can look and see if you've applied for a debt consolidation loan or if you got one. That may make them wary about extending credit to you in the future. So understand, just because you get a debt consolidation loan doesn't mean it's not going to have a negative impact on your credit. It could. Another negative to a debt consolidation loan is you're going to get hit with a lot of offers. You're going to be inundated with offers of companies that want to lend you this money. Just understand, sometimes that can be a hassle. Whether you want to deal with it or not, that's up to you. Who is debt consolidation for then? I mean, if you have some high interest cards and we can get them into a lower interest debt consolidation loan, Yeah, that might make some sense. You got to do the math on that. Might make some sense. For people who are really scared about damaging their credit or who are really concerned about falling behind on their cards, it might be right for them. But I like it least as an option because, like we've talked about before, you got to qualify for it. You're still going to probably pay back double the amount of debt. And it's going to still take several years for you to get out of this debt consolidation loan. And sometimes it's like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, right? What's the real benefit? None. So how do we decide, right? Debt settlement, bankruptcy, debt consolidation. So many choices. How do we decide? Well, first of all, you should go ask a professional, right? PandA Law, someone who offers all these services, or at least two of these three services in your state that are reputable. That's a good way to start. You also got to think about, well, what assets might you keep? What kind of bankruptcy do you qualify for? What you can afford monthly. These are all things to consider. Do you have enough money to pay an emergency situation right now? Maybe we need to think about debt settlement. Maybe we need to think about bankruptcy. This $300 a month or so that you're paying on minimum payments, is it getting you anywhere, right? How long is it going to take you to get out of debt making minimum payments? 35 years, 3 to 4 times the debt. These are all kinds of things that you need to consider when you're deciding whether any of these options are good for you. And then if one of them or multiple are, how to choose between them. So as I hit on a second ago, well, once you're kind of factoring all these things in on which way to go, well, how do you make the final decision? You should talk to a professional. So you want to talk to a lawyer, if at all possible, not a debt settlement company or a credit repair company. You want to talk to someone who's actually licensed fiduciary in your state that can talk to you intelligently about all these things. So look for a local lawyer that does at least 2 of 3 of these things, right? So bankruptcy and debt settlement is normally what lawyers will do. They don't normally do debt consolidation because that's a loan, right? Also, you don't want to talk to a salesperson, right? You don't want to talk to a paralegal. When you call in, if you can talk to a lawyer, that's what you want. If you can talk to a partner at the firm, that's what you want. If you can talk to a founding partner or an equity partner, meaning they're owners in the firm, that's what you want. You want to get to a person who's not selling you, who's going to be responsible on the back end for what they're telling you on the front end. Because if you're not going to talk to that salesperson again, who cares what they tell you? It's not going to come true. There's also an option of talking to a nonprofit credit counseling person. They're going to talk to you about how to restructure the debt, how to create a budget. A lot of times this is not going to work. It's going to be the same as a bankruptcy Chapter 13 kind of scenario without the protection of the court. And it's not going to resolve the issue of you not being able to afford the debt. That's normally the bigger issue, because once you've got to this point, you've probably whittled it down to what you need and what you don't need, and you're living very basically, right? So how much more can you whittle? Not much. You need some kind of legal protection at that point, and that means either debt settlement with a law firm or bankruptcy. Okay, so as a simple recap, we've talked about bankruptcy, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, versus debt settlement, which is informal negotiation outside of court to lower your debt, get you on an affordable payment plan, versus debt consolidation, which is where you get a loan to pay off all these other unsecured debts, and then you pay back that loan. Which is right for you? Who's to say? I mean, maybe you can answer a lot of the questions we've talked about today, but really you should go talk to a professional that does at least 2 of 3 of these things so they can give you an idea of what your options are, hopefully within the state, and that they're a practicing active lawyer within the state in which you reside. If you have any questions or suggestions for additional videos in the future, please put them in the comments. I'd love to interact with you that way, answer your questions, maybe put on a topic that you'd like to see in the future. I thank you so much for watching the channel. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see some more content like this in the future. Thank you so much. PandA Law Firm.